Hello, and welcome to Speed Movie. Today we're breaking down Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children. When Jacob discovers clues to a mystery that stretches across time, he finds Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children. But the danger deepens after he gets to know the residents and learns about their special powers. Spoilers ahead, folks! Let's jump right into the spine-tingling details. The little girl picked up the large drumstick and placed it at the back of her head, and within seconds, the drumstick was gnawed clean. This was an eerie orphanage where everyone possessed superpowers. For instance, there was a girl who could boil water with a mere touch, another who could effortlessly lift 800 tons of white radishes, and mysterious twins who always covered their faces. One girl had a body lighter than a feather and could fly once she took off her iron shoes. Then there was a boy who could spew flies from his mouth. Miss Peregrine, the head mistress of this orphanage, had the power to control time and could transform between human and bird forms, and she had created a time loop that kept the orphanage perpetually stuck on a single day. On this particular day, a boy named Jacob arrived, finding the orphanage in a state of disrepair, starkly different from his grandfather's vivid descriptions. The previous night, Jacob's grandfather had his eyes gouged out by a mysterious monster, and with his dying breath, he implored Jacob to find Miss Peregrine at the orphanage. Jacob's grandfather had his eyes gouged out by a monster, and with his dying breath, he told Jacob to find Miss Peregrine at the orphanage. Jacob walked into the castle, and suddenly he realized there were people there, and not just one. Jacob got so scared that he turned and ran, but he tripped and knocked himself out. When he woke up, he found himself being carried on the shoulder of a little girl, and there was a row of people standing not far away. Their appearances reminded Jacob of the characters from the bedtime stories his grandfather used to tell. They took Jacob into a cave and brought him back to 1943, where the orphanage was still intact. Jacob met Miss Peregrine and the other peculiar children of the orphanage, including a girl who could ripen plants with a touch and a boy who could bring puppets to life. But he also encountered the monster that had been hunting these peculiars. Jacob's grandfather had his eyes gouged out by a monster, an invisible creature that only special peculiars could see, and both Jacob and his grandfather were among these rare few. Jacob demanded answers from Miss Peregrine about how his grandfather died, but she remained silent. So, to uncover the truth, Wind Girl took Jacob underwater, creating an oxygen bubble for him with a single breath. On a mysterious ship, Wind Girl handed Jacob a box filled with cherished memories of her and his grandfather, and back at the orphanage, Miss Peregrine decided to reveal everything to Jacob. Long ago, a group of peculiar scientists conducted an experiment for immortality, but it tragically failed, mutating their bodies and turning them into monsters. To revert to their human forms, they discovered they needed to consume the eyes of peculiars, which would restore their bodies but leave their eyes disturbingly altered. So they began capturing peculiars worldwide, leading to countless victims. A corpse without eyes appeared on the beach. Just moments ago, a bird informed Miss Peregrine that the monster was nearby and would soon find them. Upon hearing this, Miss Peregrine immediately instructed the children to prepare to leave, while Jacob prepared to return to his own world. But as soon as he stepped out of the time corridor, disaster struck. Jacob realized the monster was close and knew he had to warn Miss Peregrine because she and the children couldn't see the monster. Only Jacob could. As he rushed back into the time corridor, he noticed someone following him. It was the monster's leader, Mr. Baron. Baron captured Jacob and found Miss Peregrine's orphanage. To protect the children, Miss Peregrine transformed into a bird and was taken away by Baron. As soon as Baron left, they sprang into action, preparing for the monster's attack. Just as they were ready, a colossal monster crawled in from outside the wall. A colossal monster crawled in from outside the wall. The peculiar children were helpless because the monster was invisible to them. At that moment, the monster wrapped its tongue around Puppet Boy and slammed him against the wall. In this critical moment, Jacob seized the opportunity and shot an arrow into the monster's shoulder, saving Puppet Boy, and then led everyone to retreat to the attic. Plant Girl used her powers to make the tree trunk grow rapidly, allowing everyone to escape through the branches. But then, a bomber flew overhead and dropped a bomb. In the nick of time, Wind Girl untied her iron shoes and flew away with Jacob, evading danger. Jacob, holding Wind Girl's hand, met up with everyone on the beach. Although the immediate crisis was averted, they knew they needed to rescue Miss Peregrine and recreate the time loop to survive. But how could they cross the sea without a boat? Jacob suddenly remembered the sunken ship underwater, a century-old wreck, and with a gentle breath, Wind Girl cleared all the water around it. With a gentle breath, Wind Girl cleared all the water around the sunken ship. Fire Girl slapped her hand down, igniting the engine, and within 3 minutes, the ship was pushed to the surface. This is how the group set off to rescue Miss Peregrine. At an amusement park, Jacob and Wind Girl found the monster's leader, Mr. Baron, in a theater. To successfully rescue Miss Peregrine, they had to eliminate all the monsters. Jacob held Wind Girl's hand to lure Baron, and Baron fell for it, sending all the monsters after them to the square. But at this moment, Peculiars prepared in advance, hurled snowballs and cotton candy at the monsters, revealing them. Since only Jacob could see the monsters, the others needed this tactic. Then Puppet Boy gave all the skeletons hearts, and in an instant, millions of skeletons surged from the sunken ship and clashed with the monsters. The skeleton army quickly emerged victorious. Flyboy unleashed a swarm of flies, immobilizing the humanoid monster. A cat-like creature lunged at the children, and the little girl opened her mouth wide and took a bite. The twins seized the opportunity to remove their masks, instantly turning a monster to stone and shattering it to pieces. Meanwhile, the ice monster captured Strong Girl, freezing her solid. Even Plant Girl's vegetation was ineffective against the ice monster, and Fire Girl's powers were useless as well. At this critical moment, Puppet Boy revived a puppet elephant, which stomped the ice monster to death. On the other side, Wind Girl blew Baron forcefully against the wall. Just recently, the monster's leader, Mr. Baron, had captured Miss Peregrine. Jacob, determined to save his grandfather, needed to find Miss Peregrine, create a time loop, and change history to bring his grandfather back to life. Seizing the moment, Jacob entered the lab and released all the birds, including Miss Peregrine. Flyboy unleashed a swarm of flies, immobilizing the humanoid monster. The twins seized the moment to remove their masks, instantly turning a monster to stone, and Wind Girl took a deep breath and blew Mr. Baron against the wall. Jacob took this opportunity to enter the lab and release all the birds, including Miss Peregrine. Soon, Wind Girl ran out of breath, and Baron transformed his hand into an axe, forcefully chopping his way into the lab. When Wind Girl and Puppet Boy arrived, they found two Jacobs, one of whom was actually Baron in disguise. At that moment, a monster appeared behind them, and Jacob could see it, but Baron could not, and consequently, the big boss Mr. Baron met his end at the hands of the very monster he had created. With history altered by Jacob, his grandfather was brought back to life, and Jacob returned to 1943 and lived a happy life with Wind Girl.